Dumped by her fiancé on her engagement day and shunned by her own family, Evelyn Carlyle agrees to a spontaneous marriage with a mysterious stranger. Waking up in a modest home, far from the luxury she's accustomed to, she's forced to learn a new way of life and figure out who her accidental husband really is. But the more she learns about Aidan, the more she notices strange inconsistencies. He knows too much about the rich life, but he's keenly avoiding the past. When the truth comes out, Evelyn is faced with the toughest choice of her life: trust him or leave forever? Don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss new stories. Evelyn Carlyle always lived in a world where everything was predetermined. Her family, owners of the international Carlyle Grand Hotel chain, had built their influence over decades. From an early age, she knew that her life was not her own. Her upbringing was impeccable: elite schools, etiquette courses, social events. But most importantly, her future was decided before she was born. She was supposed to marry Lucas Devereux. Lucas was the perfect choice from the family's perspective: a successful, ambitious heir to the investment fund Devereux Capital. Their union was pure calculation, a deal that would strengthen both families' businesses. Today was the day of their official engagement. And on that day her world collapsed. When Evelyn entered the Carlyle Grand drawing room, the vast hall was already filled with guests. Politicians, businessmen, celebrities, the entire elite world of the city. She looked for Lucas, but he was nowhere to be seen. Her mother, Margaret Carlyle, an elegant woman with control in her blood, approached her. "You're late," she said quietly but coldly. "I came down exactly at the appointed time. 3 minutes later than expected. Don't forget who you are." Evelyn gritted her teeth. "Where is Lucas?" Margaret looked around quickly. "He should have arrived a minute ago. But he didn't come." And after 5 minutes the room began to whisper. When the doors swung open, Evelyn felt relieved. But it disappeared at that very moment. Lucas did not enter the hall alone. His hand lay casually on the waist of another woman, a tall brunette in a scarlet dress whose posture radiated self-confidence. The hall froze. Evelyn couldn't move. Lucas looked at her calmly. And then he said, "I never loved you." Silence tore through the air. "This marriage is a mistake." Her heart stopped. "Are you kidding?" Lucas shook his head. "No. I'm tired of playing a role. I'm not going to live by a script that was created for me." Evelyn couldn't breathe. Her mother took a step forward, but Lucas only smirked. "This is not up for discussion." She felt a cold blow on her back. But what was even worse was that after his words, her mother slowly turned to her. Margaret didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She just looked coldly at her daughter. "You have disgraced our family." Evelyn winced. "Mom, but I..." "Leave." Like the crack of a whip. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Are you serious? You're not Carlyle anymore." The hall watched in silence. And she turned around and ran out. The rain poured down on the streets. Evelyn walked without knowing where she was going. Its cold, wet hair stuck to the skin. She simply walked forward until her feet brought her to the bar on the corner. She walked inside, all wet, but she didn't care. The bartender looked at her. "Tough day?" She laughed and cried at the same time. "You have no idea how much." "Strong drink?" She nodded. And then a man sat down next to me. "You don't look like a man who drinks whiskey." She turned around. In front of her sat a tall man with dark hair and a light stubble. "Are you a psychologist?" He chuckled. "No. Just a person who is also having a shitty day." They looked at each other for a few seconds. And then he extended his hand. "Aidan." She shook it. "Evelyn." And that moment changed her life forever. Evelyn woke up with a headache. The light was shining straight into her eyes, and she closed her eyelids, trying to remember where she was. The feeling of someone else's bed. Soft sheets, but none of the familiar smell of her home. She sat up abruptly and everything started spinning before her eyes. The last thing she remembered was bar, Aidan, alcohol. The idea of running away, forgetting, disappearing. She strained, trying to reconstruct the events of the night. The bar was small, warm, and dimly lit. Aidan sat next to her, his voice even and calm, as if he knew how to speak properly to women in distress. "You look like you've lost your whole world." She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I lost everything I had." He looked at her carefully. "Maybe it wasn't your world. Maybe it was a world you were forced to live in." Evelyn held her breath. She never thought of it that way. She didn't remember who suggested it first. Who said the words that changed her life? "Why don't we get married?" Maybe it was him. Maybe it was her. But at that moment it seemed like the perfect solution. Crazy. But ideal. Evelyn exhaled and looked at her left hand. A thin gold ring sparkled on her finger. "Oh shit." She threw back the blanket, but at that moment the bedroom door opened. Aidan stood in the doorway, unperturbed, wearing a dark t-shirt and slightly disheveled from sleep. "You're already awake." Her eyes widened. We really did it?" He chuckled slowly. "Are you talking about marriage?" "Yes, we did." Evelyn covered her face with her hands. "God. I also thought that you would change your mind when you sobered up." She slowly removed her hands from her face and met his gaze. "You want to say that you don't regret it?" He shrugged. "I haven't decided yet." "What about you?" Evelyn wanted to scream that this was madness. But something in my chest tightened. She didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back to my mother. She didn't want to listen to the town gossip about her shameful engagement. And then she realized. "I don't know anything about you." Aidan tilted his head. "But she still married me." Her lips parted, but she couldn't find anything to say. He chuckled. "So, are we staying in this marriage or getting an annulment?" Evelyn held her breath. She had a choice before her. Stay and find out who this man is, with whom she tied herself in a drunken delirium. Or return to the life that others chose for her. She took a breath. "Let's try." Aidan raised his eyebrows. "What exactly?" She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Let's try to be husband and wife." Her words surprised even herself. But interest flashed in his eyes. "Okay, Evelyn Carlyle. Then let's begin." She didn't know what awaited her. But one thing was certain. There was no turning back. Evelyn Carlyle was accustomed to luxury. To a life in which everything is thought out to the smallest detail. Expensive breakfasts with perfectly cut fruit, ironed clothes, a car with a driver waiting for her at the door. But the day she woke up in a small house on the outskirts, her world changed. The first thing she smelled was coffee. It was strong, rich, and not at all like the kind served in luxury hotels. Evelyn slowly got out of bed and walked into the kitchen. Aidan stood at the stove, casually dressed in a gray t-shirt and sweatpants, toasting some bread. "Good morning, wife." She froze. Her stomach clenched at those words. "Don't call me that." Aidan chuckled. "But we are married. Or have you already forgotten?" Evelyn exhaled heavily and sank into a chair. "I haven't forgotten. It still feels like a dream." He placed a mug of coffee and a plate of toast in front of her. "Get used to it. This is your new reality." She took the cup, mechanically took a sip, and immediately choked. "Oh my God, is this machine oil?" Aidan laughed. "Black coffee. Welcome to ordinary life." Evelyn put the cup back with a groan. "You're kidding me." "Not a bit. Now you're not a princess, but an ordinary guy's ordinary wife." She pressed her lips together. "I'm not a princess. But you act as if you are royalty." Evelyn gave him a murderous look. "Just because I'm not used to drinking terrible coffee. Just because you're not used to normal life." She pushed her plate away and crossed her arms. "What now? What are we going to do?" Aidan leaned towards her, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "You promised to try. So, we'll live together as husband and wife." Evelyn met his gaze without looking away. "I don't know how to be an ordinary wife." Aidan chuckled. "So it's time to learn." The first day turned out to be more difficult than she thought. Things that were once done for her now became her responsibilities. When Aidan gave her a towel and offered to wash her clothes, she was confused. "Where are the servants?" He choked on his laughter. "Are you serious?" Evelyn blushed. "Well, I just never did it." He shook his head. "You don't think you can wear the same dress your whole life, do you?" She grabbed the towel in irritation and headed towards the washing machine. "How difficult can it be?" 5 minutes later the foam came out, flooding the floor. "Your mother!" Aidan stood in the doorway, almost crying with laughter. "Yes, definitely royalty." Evelyn threw a dirty rag at him. "Shut up and help." He came closer, smiling. Okay. Lesson 1: Never add so much powder." She muttered something under her breath, but let him show her how to do it properly. By evening she was squeezed out like a lemon. Who would have thought that ordinary life requires so much effort? Aidan sat on the couch reading the newspaper. Evelyn sighed and sat down next to him. "You knew everything, right? You knew it would be difficult for me." He smiled without looking up from his newspaper. "Of course. But you're holding up better than I thought." She looked at him in surprise. "Do you really think so?" He met her gaze. "Yes. Not every high society girl could last here for more than a day." Evelyn smiled for the first time all day. "I'm not going to give up." Aidan leaned closer. "Then let's see how long you can last." She realized that this was the beginning of something bigger. She was no longer an heir. She was a wife now. And she was going to find out what that really meant. It's been a week since Evelyn became Aidan's wife. During these days she was confronted with a reality she had not known before. She learned to cook, although most of her culinary experiments ended in failure. She tried to cope with everyday life, but even the simplest cleaning took more energy than she could have imagined. But something was changing. Every day she felt more and more free. Without the constant obligation to look perfect, without her mother's stern gaze, without the oppressive feeling that her life has long been planned out for her. And Aidan was nearby. His irony and calm, his indifference to status, his ability to ignore money, all this was new. And the more she got to know him, the more she realized, he is not who he claims to be. The first suspicion arose when they went to the supermarket. "Are you sure you know how to choose vegetables?" Aidan teased. "Very funny," she snorted, choosing tomatoes. At that moment he froze, looking at the wine rack. Evelyn couldn't help but notice how his gaze ran over the bottles, how he leaned down and carefully picked one up. She looked at the label. "Chateau Margaux, 2001. Do you know anything about wine?" He hesitated for a second, then shrugged. "Once upon a time." "You said you worked as a regular mechanic? Where did you get such taste?" Aidan glanced at her quickly. "I read books." She said nothing, but her suspicions began to grow. The second moment came when they accidentally found themselves next to a car dealership. Evelyn paused at the display case, admiring the sports cars that had once been a part of her life. "Have you ever driven anything like this?" she asked Aidan. "Of course," he answered too quickly. She frowned. "I thought you weren't the type to drive supercars." He was silent for a split second. "My youth was stormy." She felt doubt stir inside her. But everything finally became clear when she came across an old album. It lay on a shelf in the bedroom, slightly dusty, as if no one had opened it for a long time. Evelyn had no intention of rummaging through other people's things. But her curiosity got the better of her. She carefully turned the first page. And then she froze. Aidan was in the picture. But not the one she knew. He was dressed in an expensive suit, and stood next to men who clearly belonged to high society. The photographs were from expensive events, they showed luxurious halls, limousines, diamonds. She turned the page, her fingers trembling. And then she saw something that completely shocked her. Glossy magazine. Aidan Hilton on the cover. The billionaire who spurned wealth. Why did the heir to the Hilton Corporation leave the business world? Evelyn couldn't breathe. She slammed the album shut, her heart pounding loudly. Her husband. Her accidental husband. He was the heir to $1 billion corporation. And he hid it from her. At that moment, the door opened and Aiden entered the room. "What are you doing?" His voice was even, but his eyes were wary. Evelyn turned slowly, holding the album in her hands. "Who are you really?" He stopped. There was a dead silence for a few seconds. "You found it," he said quietly. Her chest heaved heavily. "Have you been lying to me all this time?" Aiden slowly closed his eyes and then opened them again. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell the whole truth." "You are a billionaire." He smiled bitterly. "No. I was a billionaire. Now I'm just Aiden." Evelyn shook her head in shock. "You left all this? Why?" He went to the window and looked out at the street. "Because it was destroying me." She looked at him, trying to comprehend what she had heard. "You let me think that you are an ordinary person when you—" She didn't finish. Aiden turned to face her. "If I told you from the beginning, would you have stayed?" Her lips parted, but there was no answer. She didn't know. Now everything is different. And she had a choice before her. Trust him or leave forever. Evelyn couldn't take her eyes off Aiden. Standing before her was the man she had lived with for the past few weeks, the man who had been patient with her antics, laughed at her clumsy attempts to adapt, and always looked at her in a way no one had ever looked at her before. But now she saw him differently. He was not just a mechanic. He was not just a man who agreed to a spontaneous marriage. He was a billionaire hiding from his past life. And he hid it from her. "You let me think you were an ordinary person, but all this time you knew who I was, you knew what I went through." Her voice trembled with a mixture of anger and resentment. Aiden ran his hand over his face, his gaze remaining calm but pained. "I didn't know who you were when we met. I didn't care who you were. But you knew later. And you didn't say anything." He took a deep breath. "I was afraid that if I told you, you would leave." Her chest heaved with heavy breathing. "And you thought that hiding the truth was the best option?" He shook his head, leaning against the windowsill. "I wanted at least one person in my life to see me as just a person. Not an heir, not a business object, not a person who could be used." He looked up at her. "Just Aiden." Evelyn held her breath. She understood him. She knew what it meant to be part of a world where you were valued not for who you were, but for your status. But that didn't justify the lie. "You think you can just disappear from the past?" Her voice became quieter, but that only made it more prickly. Aiden closed his eyes for a second, then looked at her again. "I didn't disappear. I made a choice." "Is giving up money a choice?" He smiled bitterly. "To give up power is freedom." She didn't know what to say. The words stuck in her throat. She walked out of the house and slammed the door behind her. My chest ached with emotion and my head was buzzing. She walked down the street, not knowing where, just getting further away. She thought she had figured out Aiden, that she had seen the real him. But she was wrong. 2 hours later she returned. Aiden sat on the porch with his head bowed. As soon as he saw her, he stood up. "You're back." "I don't know why." They looked at each other in silence. And then she asked the big question. "Did you love me? Or was that a lie too?" He came closer slowly, as if he was afraid of scaring her. "I loved it." Her lips trembled. "When did you realize?" "When you got angry at the washing machine." She couldn't help but laugh through her tears. "What?" "I realized I loved you when I saw you cursing the appliances because you were doing laundry for the first time in your life." She covered her face with her hands. "This is the worst declaration of love in history. But it's true." She looked at him. "What should we do now?" Aiden took her hand. "Choose." She chose her whole life. But now she chose for herself. She took a step towards him. "I'm staying." Aiden took a deep breath and then hugged her tightly, as if he would never let go again. And she understood. It was real life. And now she belonged only to her.